calling the game last night. A Bengals win over the Buffalo Bills, 24-18 in Cincinnati, but now home in Michigan. Joining us from NBC Sports, good morning to you, Mike Tirico.
Hello, Mr. Siciliano. How are we doing?
I'm doing well. Nice hat, by the way.
Of course, it is opening night of basketball season for the first time in your lifetime, for the first time in the lifetime of many who are watching, listening, streaming, consuming. James Arthur Boeheim, is not the head coach of Syracuse basketball to start a season. Adrian Autry era begins tonight. I was at the game, Syracuse-BC game, which I know nobody wants to talk about, Friday, but got to watch a quarter and a half of football with Coach Boeheim up in the press box. He's doing great. Going to do a little TV this year, which will be fun.
That's awesome.
Mr. Media, that'll be great. But I do have to tell you, Jim Boeheim is a huge football fan. He has seen so much football and loves it, kind of like Tom Izzo's a big football fan. I love talking other sports with coaches from another sport because they see something cool and unique. Anyway, it was a blast to do that. I'm ready for hoop season, and it's halftime in the NFL season, isn't it?
I'm ready. I'm ready for hoop season too. I'm actually going to see Coach Saturday. He's out here in Los Angeles,
yes.
and going to see him Saturday evening for a little dinner. And for those who don't know, like you said, he doesn't miss anything. He sits in his house in Syracuse and literally watches basketball or anything until 3 a.m. Like if Sacramento does something, he sees it at 1 a.m. He doesn't miss a thing. And I have no doubt he was watching your game last night, where afterwards Zach Taylor doing Bengals radio, it might have been with our friend Dan Horde, had a mic drop moment at the end. He ended his interview by saying, "The Bengals are back." Mike, what'd you see from them last night?
I didn't hear about that. That's pretty cool, and I feel the same way. You know, they beat Seattle and San Francisco and Buffalo, and those are 3 good wins in a row, and that's not taking away from the win against Arizona before that, but they're on a heater. They've won 4 in a row. This is a lot like it was last year, and what we're seeing is Joe Burrow's calf is better, and they are who they have been. The ability to defend people in this league is so good for so many of the good teams that the plays that are unscripted, when the eraser is out there in the quarterback's hand, he's running around with the ball, whether it's Josh or it's Patrick Mahomes or it's Lamar or it's Herbert tonight or Joe Burrow, that's the difference maker in the key plays of the game. And Joe Burrow has his calf back to health where he can do that. And it made a difference in those early drives, and it made a difference in their win over Buffalo, who's got some work to do here in the second half of the season. It's going to be a tough haul for the Bills in the second half.
And you made the point after those first 2 drives, because Josh Allen marched his team down the field like, hey, this is going to be a great night. We have these 2 great quarterbacks. And then Lou Anarumo's defense put the clamps down, and we really didn't see anything. They had a couple of drives that stalled, obviously, but anything productive until the end of the game. How concerned should they be in Buffalo this morning?
Yeah, I think concerned. And I don't think it's because the team isn't good. They're good. I think the schedule is a mountain coming forward, and they have a bunch of injuries. You know, you can bring in people like Rasul Douglas to replace what you lose with Tre'Davious White, like Linval Joseph, who comes in the middle of the year like he did with Philadelphia and was part of a Super Bowl run. You can bring him in to take a little bit of what you missed without Daquan Jones. But you start losing people over and over, and you had injuries in the game. Benford gets hurt, misses the second half. Micah Hyde gets injured in and out of the lineup. You lose a linebacker in Bernard during the game. At some point, it's going to matter. They kept it together. I mean, Cincinnati didn't walk up and down the field on them at all in the second half. Buffalo hung in the game. But given what they have coming up, you know, you look at the AFC and you're thinking maybe it's going to take 10. And right now, the AFC North is halfway there at this point. So I'm a little worried that Buffalo's not going to be able to get to the playoffs. Now, having said that, they can beat Miami head-to-head and win the division. They've got that shot at the end of the season. So they're just going to have to keep pace, but keeping pace is going to be hard because there's a backload to this Buffalo schedule. But I trust Sean McDermott and I trust Josh Allen, so I'm not going to bet against them. But I'm a little more worried if I'm a Bills fan than I was last night.
Yeah, I trust them both, and they have the quarterback, and they've proven they could beat the Dolphins, and they have that game, even though it is going to be obviously a lot on the line there. I was coming into the season, Mike, they were that one team where I hate to say, well, the pressure is on them, because pressure, as you know, is on every team and every coach and every quarterback in this league. It's not more different one place than another. But it kind of feels like this group has to do it now, this year. Like, Von's not getting any younger. This could be it for him this year. Like, how many times can you keep this group as currently constructed together and say the results are going to be different?
Yeah, windows close fast, and they don't always close because of age. Sometimes they close because of salary cap. And it's funny, Chris and I were talking about this during the week, and we mentioned it briefly on the air. Cincinnati's window changes if they can't bring T. Higgins back. And it's really hard to have two receivers on number one receiver contracts plus a quarterback you're paying $250 million to and field an offensive line to keep them upright. Those are hard things. You have to make choices. And that's why I want to give credit to what Kansas City's done and what Brett Veach has done with the Chiefs here over the last few years, because they have really worked. And Steve Spagnuolo gets a lot of the credit too, because they have reworked around what they have to pay Mahomes, Kelsey, protecting those guys with an offensive line, pay a Chris Jones. There was a contract issue, as we know, at the start of the season. But 15, and I don't have the count as of last week when Rich was doing the game in Germany. I don't have the count right now, but when we had them earlier in the year, of their 25 guys on the defensive side of the ball, 15 were either year one or year two, which meant rookie contracts, some of them less expensive than others. And you got to put it together on some portion of your team with a little bit less expensive players. So can Cincinnati, after this year, keep Jamar Chase and T. Higgins with Burrow plus the offensive line to protect and all that stuff? It's going to be really hard, because I asked Chris on the air, and that's what I love about Collinsworth. He's not shy about sharing his opinion. I says, T. Higgins a true number one receiver? Because, Andrew, we've always seen the guy opposite a great player gets that money, but he's not a number one guy. And Chris said, absolutely. He thinks T. Higgins is a number one. So if somebody's going to pay him a boatload of money to be their guy, to go with a stud quarterback or a future star quarterback, will the Bengals look like this? So maybe there's an urgency there as well. But to the main crux of your question, there's urgency with Buffalo for a variety of reasons. And some of them are salary cap, and a couple of them the vets they have on the defensive side of the ball.
Talking to Mike Tirico, who called the game last night, the Bengals beating the Bills in Cincinnati. And as it stands right now, that is pending your Jets this evening. All four teams would be in from the AFC North right now. Mike, how many teams eventually at the end of the year do you think get in?
You think three would be what we've seen from these divisions that feel stacked in this current format of 7 playoff teams and 4 teams in each division. And I say that because the interdivision battles tend to beat you up a little bit. But I'll take away this, and I asked almost a very similar question to Zach Taylor, the Bengals coach, this week, and he called it the Hunger Games in the AFC. You play each other and you beat each other up. I mean, the Bengals can put up an NFC West championship banner. They swept the NFC West going 4-0. But when you play against these AFC North teams, you learn the toughness within the division. And these battles harden these teams. So let's say you get 3 out. You may end up with 3 of the final 4 out of the AFC North. But we got a long, long, long way to go. We're halfway through the season. You know, there are going to be turns and injuries and other subplots that pop up that you never expect. But Baltimore looks really good. Pittsburgh, I don't want to be in a close game with them. I don't want to go face Jim Schwartz's defense. Who knows where people are going to bring pressure from. You called one of those Cleveland games on radios. You've seen them in person firsthand. You know they're the real deal. And what I saw last night is a team that, if you tell me these guys are going to show up in the AFC Championship game, probably at Arrowhead again, like it usually is, I believe that Cincinnati could be there again. They look that good.
I totally believe it. I don't want to only focus on the AFC here, but real quick, you've done a couple of Dolphins games this year. Rich is going to join us from Germany, as I mentioned, coming up in a bit. Where do you stand on the they can't beat anyone thing?
Right. First off, I was texting Rich this morning as I was getting a cup of coffee. Get an update on his travel itinerary for the next couple of days. He has promised to become a full-fledged tourist in Germany. Good. So if you can get the loyal RES Rich Eisen Show viewers / listeners / downloaders the update on the Eisen as a tourist tour of Germany, that would be a great update for the listeners. The Dolphins, I thought Mike McDaniels said it best. If you don't want it to be the narrative, then beat good teams, right? And that's why we should talk about it. There's so much in football right now that is conversation. And before the game's over, people want to know, well, what's going to be the topic of conversation this week? Well, can we talk about the game first? But if you want to fast forward to that with Miami, you're going to have to be one of these big boys before people start giving you that respect. Now, if you get in the playoffs, it doesn't matter if you haven't beaten somebody. Beat them in the playoffs. That was the story of the Bengals 2 years ago. I did the Bengals-Raiders wild card game in the jungle, and the Bengals hadn't won a playoff game in 31 years. But they did. And then they got to the Super Bowl. And then last year, they were this close to getting back to the Super Bowl. The penalty at the end of the AFC Championship game. It's a 3-point game. Butker kicks a late field goal. They're close to being back-to-back Super Bowl champs. It's a team that had won, I think the number is, Andrew, 5 playoff games in their history. And the last 2 years, they've won 5 playoff games. And the 2 losses in the last 5 years are the Super Bowl, the Rams, that got the ball at the end of the game, and then the Chiefs beating them by a field goal in the AFC title game. So they stopped the narrative by performance. So it doesn't mean the narrative has to stop weeks 1 through 18. If you get to week 19, then you got a chance to stop the narrative.
All right. I said we'd get to the NFC. To heck with it. Last one for you. AFC only. Because your Jets, who play this evening, you get them coming up this week on the road in Vegas against Antonio Pierce and the cigar-smoking Raiders after that game yesterday.
Let me clarify my Jets first off. That was something I've grown out of. It's like kids with an allergy early on. I grew up at Shea Stadium, for anybody who remembers that the Jets played there. That was my youth and my existence. But I try to stay neutral in this job.
I wasn't suggesting bias. You know that.
No. That's just, it's Scott Van Pelt, our pal, says everybody's from somewhere.
Exactly.
That's my somewhere. And now I'm 25 years living in Detroit, so they become my Lions as well. And all that. So it's all good. It's all fun. I've got one it's Syracuse. I'll admit to that on a full-time basis. Look, the Jets have an interesting spot, and I'll just hit them for 1 second because I think they can win this game, and all of a sudden they start believing we can win the division because they're tied in the loss column with Miami, and they jump ahead of Buffalo, and they've got stuff ahead of them and all that. The Raider thing is fascinating. I mean, like right out of it, maybe this was scripted. Maybe this was part of the NFL script. Hey, we need to dust off the Raider storylines a little bit. Let's just get this going. And Antonio Pierce, NWA, Compton,
so cool.
Cigars in the locker room. I mean, what the heck happened in 1 week? I mean, what was that? It was a complete 180, and it's cool, and it's fun, and it's going to be a scene. You think the Raider fans who were quiet are not going to come out of the woodwork here, and the Jets fans are going to make the pilgrimage to Allegiant Stadium. So it will be the Jets, Raiders, old AFL, absolute carnival the week before the F1 race in Vegas. So let's hit the strip. Let's go. Let's have fun. I'm looking forward to Sunday night.
I mean, I that's going to be awesome. And the Raiders get the whole New York, not the hotel and casino, but they get both New York teams there back to back.
Full Sinatra.
Yes, I've never seen. And you guys, hold on. Now I'm off track. You guys had Josh Allen listens to Sinatra during the week. I had never heard that one before.
Pre-game, Josh has an eclectic mix, a little bit of Elvis. And he said, he told us this was in the game we did up in Buffalo. He said, and Frank Sinatra, That's Life. He said, Frank Sinatra's That's Life is one of the great songs in the history of music. Josh Allen's words about that song. And you listen to the words and I love Sinatra. I grew up in New York. My family that I grew up with listened to Sinatra. So I love Frank Sinatra music. It's mixed in with all my other stuff on my Apple iTunes or whatever the heck I have on here. And That is a great song. So that's why we used it for the story of Josh Allen. But listens to some Elvis. Josh is a cool dude. He's a cool dude. I love, and I said it when they scored the touchdowns back-to-back to start the game. When you have good quarterbacks, you usually have a terrific game because the defenses rise up and it gives you something. And right now we got 10 rookie quarterbacks in the league if Tommy DeVito plays against the Giants. 10 rookies who've started games. It's a very interesting time in the league and puts so much value in two things: where you're going to draft and who you're going to draft next year if you're one of the teams that doesn't have one, and what happens with Fields in Chicago. I think it's really interesting. Probably one of the most interesting things to watch the last 7 weeks of the season. Does he secure the job going forward, or is he trade fodder to add to what the Bears can do in their rebuild? I think it's one of the more fascinating things of the last half of the season.
All right, I promise, very last thing, short answer, because we'll close it here with the Jets. I was at the Breeders' Cup on Saturday, spoke briefly.
Cool.
Darren Rodgers, who had a lovely purple suit on.
Name drop.
No, hold on. We're making it. We're bringing it full circle here.
Good one.
He had on, I wouldn't call them orthotics, but like those, and he joked about it on the broadcast, those shoes. What do you call them? Like the almost feels like the bottom of a walking boot if you've ever worn one of those. Right. You kind of roll on them. But he made his way back and forth to the buffet, to the window with friends, with Miles Teller. Everyone's having a good time. He was moving well, okay? Told me he was feeling well. Wouldn't say he's coming back. Mike, do you think he comes back? Do you think we see him on the field this year?
Everybody else, I would say no. This guy, I wouldn't put anything past him. I mean, when have you seen that somebody hurt their Achilles and then they're out there 7 weeks later in warm-ups just standing there and throwing, and doing like you said at the Breeders' Cup, walking to the window, sitting there and kind of moving around back and forth. I know he's attacking rehab in ways and with energy that most haven't before. And I know the age and I know the situation and all that, but I will not put anything past him. We didn't think Cam Akers would come back, who got hurt again, right?
Yeah, I hate that.
I hate that, man. We didn't think, and you saw him in the preseason with the Rams when you were doing the games there a couple of years ago. We never thought a running back would come back within the same year, and he did. So our heads tell us this is what happens when you get this injury, but our heads are not in the space of medical advancements continue. So I will never say no if that guy says, I think I'm going to keep the window open. Why not? And you know what? Whoever wrote the story for the NFL this year, who knows how this ends up.
Amazing script.
Winner.
Amazing.
Winner. Yeah.
Totally amazing. Yeah, I mean, Cam Akers is a lot younger, but the same doctor. And, Cam Akers didn't move a lot more than Aaron Rodgers has to move. And anyone who saw him Saturday, he was moving around. No, put it this way. If someone walked in there and had no idea who that guy in the purple suit was walking around, they would have no idea that he was rehabbing from a major injury 10 weeks ago that should limit his mobility. Yeah, 9 weeks ago, whatever it was.
Exactly.
They would have no idea. Anyway, I have this idea. We're holding you too long. We thank you kindly, sir. Great call last night. Enjoy Vegas this weekend.
I absolutely, without a doubt, I will, and enjoy the update, the big tease for the Rich Eisen American Tourist in Germany coming up later in the show.
Coming up live from Frankfurt. Thank you, Mike.
See you, bud. Go Orange.
Thank you, sir. Likewise. Mike Tirico, everybody.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.